The first shout came from the ticket booth. "Get that mud away from the doors!" The man's voice cracked through the morning air, sharp and impatient, slicing across the usual murmur of commuters dragging briefcases and coffee cups through the station. Heads turned, but no one moved. They had all seen it before. The puppy, the same scruffy little shadow that lingered just beyond the flow of polished shoes and hurried steps. His fur was a patchwork of dust and rain, ears too big for his head, tail tucked tight against the cold. Yet his eyes, dark, searching, stubbornly fixed on the station entrance, were what unsettled people most. They didn't hold the wild panic of a stray, nor the playful gleam of a pup looking for scraps. They carried something else entirely, a kind of waiting. Among the sea of commuters that morning, one woman slowed her pace. Her name was Clara Weaver, a nurse finishing a night shift at the city hospital, her uniform hidden under a long coat. She had passed this station dozens of times, but today the sight of the pup struck differently. His body trembled, not just from the chill, but with a kind of restless urgency, as though each passing train pulled him closer to an answer only he could hear. A train screeched into the platform, its metallic roar shaking the ground. Passengers surged forward, and for an instant the puppy darted toward the sound. Clara's breath caught. The tiny figure weaved dangerously close to the edge, just beyond the blur of feet, until a teenager hissed at him and stamped the ground. The puppy froze, then retreated to his patch near the station gates, curling tight but never looking away. Clara couldn't dismiss the image. She tried to keep walking, but her steps slowed. The exhaustion in her bones warred with an ache rising from somewhere deeper, a tug of recognition she couldn't name. The puppy's gaze never left the station entrance, as if waiting for someone, or something, that refused to come. "Someone should call animal control," a man muttered as he adjusted his tie. Another answered, "No use. Dog's been here for weeks. Won't move." The casual certainty in their voices sent a chill through Clara. Weeks? That meant this wasn't just chance, not some stray drifting for food. This was purpose. The morning light shifted, spilling pale gold across the tracks. The puppy rose again, ears pricking, body quivering with sudden energy. Clara followed his line of sight. A family stepped through the station doors, lugging suitcases and speaking in low, tired tones. The puppy bolted forward so fast Clara thought this must be it. This must be the moment. But the family walked past him. No hesitation, no recognition. Just another blur of shoes. The puppy whimpered, a thin sound drowned by the station's noise, and padded back to his place, curling once more. His eyes never dimmed, though. They only burned harder, as if defiance alone could summon what he longed for. Clara stood frozen. Around her, commuters hustled, trains departed, announcements echoed through metallic speakers. Life rushed forward, but the pup's vigil refused to shift. She realized then that this wasn't random at all. This was ritual. Every train, every morning, every face studied, every failure endured. The thought pressed heavy on her chest. What could possibly keep a creature so small chained to a place so loud, so merciless, so filled with strangers who barely noticed? Her heart thudded faster, the answer hovering just out of reach. But something inside told her the truth would not be simple or kind. A gust of wind swept through, carrying with it the smell of steel, oil, and old rain. The pup's fur ruffled, and his head turned once more toward the tracks. Clara tightened her grip on her coat. She didn't know why yet, but she understood one thing with sudden clarity. This wasn't the kind of story you could walk away from. The following morning, Clara returned to the station, though she told herself it was only coincidence. Her shift had ended. Her body begged for rest, yet something stronger pulled her back. She spotted him instantly. The puppy was there, in the same place, sitting so still he might have been carved from stone. His gaze locked on the station doors, unblinking, waiting. Clara moved closer this time. Commuters streamed past her, their footsteps hurried, their voices drowned in the clatter of departure boards and train whistles. But she slowed, caught in the quiet world of the animal who refused to belong to the chaos. The pup didn't flinch at her approach, though his body trembled with an energy she could feel more than see. His eyes were too full for something so small, eyes that knew longing, and something that bordered on grief. She crouched a few feet away. "What are you waiting for?" she whispered, though she knew he could not answer. The words dissolved into the air, yet in his unwavering stare she felt as if he had heard. As if he understood, a man passing by gave a sharp laugh. "Don't bother, lady." Dogs cracked in the head. "Belongs to no one." Clara's jaw tightened. There was something cruel in the certainty of strangers who never paused long enough to look deeper. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, but she stayed silent. The puppy had already proven otherwise. His devotion was too fierce to be madness. Then it happened. A child spilled from the station doors, tugging at his mother's hand, and the puppy leapt up with sudden force. His tail whipped once, twice his paws scrambling as he ran forward with a desperate yelp. Clara's heart surged. This must be the one. But the mother pulled her child away with a startled cry, dragging him past without even a glance down. The puppy skidded to a halt, shoulders sagging before slinking back to his patch by the gate. Clara's throat ached. It was the first time she saw him not only waiting but hoping, throwing his whole heart into a moment that broke apart in seconds. And then, without pause, he resumed his vigil, as though the disappointment barely registered. That resilience shook her more than the rejection. What could anchor him so deeply to a hope that had failed again and again? She left the station unsettled, but she returned the next day and the day after. Each time she found him exactly where she expected. She began to notice the pattern, the way he rose with every arriving train, scanning each wave of passengers, tail twitching with tiny bursts of belief. The way his body deflated when the doors closed again, carrying away whoever he had been waiting for. And the way he never left, no matter the hour, no matter the weather. On the fourth morning, Clara brought food. She set the small paper bag on the ground, but the puppy ignored it. His eyes stayed fixed on the entrance, locked in a ritual too sacred to be interrupted. He would rather starve than miss the face he searched for. Clara felt a sting in her eyes she fought to control. That same day, an older conductor noticed her watching. He paused, his uniform faded from years on the rails. "You've seen him, then?" he said quietly. Clara nodded. "What's his story?" The conductor's voice lowered, almost reverent. "They say he belonged to a man who used this station every day, a worker on the early train. Dog followed him here, waited till night, then walked home with him. Rain, shine, didn't matter. Always here." His words faltered. But one morning, the man didn't come back. Never boarded his return train. Folks say he passed in the city. Dog doesn't know. He just keeps waiting. Clara's breath caught. The noise of the station fell away, leaving only the weight of that truth pressing down. The image of the man's final journey intertwined with the small body that still trembled at every arrival. A loyalty so absolute it defied death. The conductor sighed and walked on, leaving Clara rooted to the spot. Her chest tightened as she turned to the puppy. His ears pricked again at the sound of another arriving train. She knew what he would do. He rose, body vibrating with anticipation, eyes searching the endless tide of strangers for the one face that would never appear. And for the first time since she had met him, Clara realized she was no longer just a passerby. She was part of his vigil now, pulled into a story that felt larger than both of them. A story that had already begun long before she arrived, and one that would demand far more of her than silent sympathy. The third morning, Clara returned to the station. She told herself it was only curiosity. She claimed she simply wanted to confirm what she already suspected, that the puppy would be there, waiting as always. But when she spotted his fragile frame pressed against the iron gate, his eyes fixed on the arriving train as though nothing else in the world mattered, she felt something inside her shift. This wasn't casual curiosity anymore. It was compulsion. The crowd poured through the doors, commuters bundled against the late winter chill, the air thick with the scent of coffee and exhaust. Clara lingered at the edge of the flow, her breath fogging in the air, and watched. The puppy rose again, trembling with sudden expectation. His paws tapped against the pavement, his tail flickered nervously, and his entire body leaned forward as though he recognized someone among the crowd. Clara followed his gaze. A man stepped off the platform, tall, carrying a battered leather briefcase. The puppy bolted toward him, his yelp sharp and piercing. Clara's pulse quickened. This was it, the person he had been waiting for. The man froze, startled, then shoved the pup away with his boot. "Get out of here," he muttered, his voice as cold as the wind. The puppy tumbled to the side, whimpered once, and retreated back to his place by the gate. His eyes never left the man, even as the crowd closed in and swallowed him whole. Clara's throat tightened. That flash of recognition in the dog's eyes hadn't been imagined. The way he had surged forward carried too much certainty. She knew then that the puppy wasn't simply waiting for kindness. He was waiting for someone specific, someone who had left him behind. That thought struck her harder than she expected. She had seen abandonment before in the hospital, the way patients sometimes stared at empty doorways where family should have walked through. This was no different. The look in the puppy's eyes was the same quiet devastation of someone who believed, against all reason, that love would return. By the time Clara reached the hospital later that day, she couldn't shake the image. She went through her shift in fragments, distracted, haunted by the sound of that yelp and the way the crowd had moved on as if it meant nothing. By evening, exhaustion should have consumed her. But instead she found herself walking back toward the station, drawn by a weight she couldn't put down. Night wrapped around the city, and the station glowed under harsh electric lights. The puppy was still there, curled against the gate, his eyes heavy but unyielding. Clara crouched down slowly, whispering, "Hey, little one." His ears twitched, but he didn't run. For the first time, she was close enough to see the grime clinging to his fur, the thin outline of his ribs pressing through. She reached out a hand, but he didn't move to meet it. He only looked past her, toward the tracks. A sudden gust of wind announced another train's arrival. The puppy's body stiffened, eyes igniting with desperate hope. Clara turned, scanning the new flood of passengers. And then she noticed something that made her stomach clench. Among the commuters, an older woman stumbled forward, clutching her coat tight, her face drawn in grief. The puppy whined sharply and darted toward her. The woman's eyes fell on him, and for an instant, everything stilled. Clara saw recognition flash across her face, followed immediately by pain so raw it seemed to hollow her. She bent down, her trembling hands hovering above the pup, but then she pulled back as if burned. Without a word, she turned and hurried into the night. The puppy froze where she had left him, his tiny chest heaving. Clara felt the breath catch in her throat. That reaction had been too telling to ignore. The woman had known him. She had known and chosen to leave. Clara's heart hammered. The story she thought she was beginning to understand had twisted into something darker. This wasn't only about loyalty. This was about betrayal, about someone who couldn't bear to claim the creature that still waited faithfully for them. And now Clara, against her will, was caught in the middle of it. The station loudspeakers droned with another announcement, but the words blurred into static in her ears. She looked down at the puppy who had returned to his place, curling into himself yet again, his eyes shining with a hope that refused to die. Clara realized then that she couldn't walk away a third time. She would have to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt to uncover it. The night train arrived later than usual, screeching against the rails as sparks lit the gloom above the platform. Rain hammered the station roof, spilling through broken seams and pattering against the concrete. Clara stood beneath the overhang, her umbrella closed at her side. She hadn't planned on returning, but she had. Something about the pup's vigil had taken root inside her. And now, in the storm's relentless downpour, she saw him again, soaked through, trembling, yet still in the same place as though carved from stone. She crouched, calling softly, hoping to coax him closer. For a moment he wavered, stepping toward her warmth, his eyes pleading. But then the sound of the train's horn echoed down the platform and he bolted, not away, but forward. Straight to the very edge. Clara's heart seized. She ran, grabbing his scruff before his paws could slip past the yellow line. He twisted in her arms, not with fear, but with fury, barking at the blur of faces rushing out from the newly arrived train. And then Clara understood. He wasn't waiting for food. He wasn't seeking shelter. He was waiting for someone. The doors flung open and dozens of passengers streamed out, umbrellas clashing, briefcases knocking against knees. The pup writhed, clawing at the ground, desperate to reach them. His whimpers rose into a keening cry that cut through the storm. People turned their heads, startled but hurried on, unwilling to stop. Clara felt his small body stiffen in her arms, his gaze locked on a man in a navy coat stepping from the last car. The man glanced down, paused only for an instant, and then pressed on, shoulders hunched against the rain. The puppy wailed, the sound raw enough to draw a murmur from the crowd. Clara's throat tightened. That reaction wasn't random. That was recognition. The man had looked at the pup, seen him, and then kept walking. She followed with her eyes, memorizing his stride, the set of his jaw, the flicker of something guilty or broken that shadowed his face. But by the time she set the pup down, the man was gone, swallowed by the city beyond the station. The puppy returned to his spot without hesitation, curling against the wet stone as if nothing had changed. Yet Clara knew everything had changed. That man was the key. He was why the puppy waited here in the cold, in the chaos, night after night. The unanswered question burned in her chest. Was he the one the dog had lost, or the one who had left? The storm thickened and trains rattled past in quick succession. Clara stayed, unable to tear herself from the mystery, watching the tiny creature hold his vigil through the tempest. Each flash of lightning revealed his thin ribs, his soaked fur clinging to fragile bones, but also the unshakable light in his eyes. This was not mere survival. This was loyalty, sharpened to the edge of pain. As midnight crept closer, the station emptied. The last clusters of travelers vanished into the rain, leaving Clara and the puppy in near silence. She lowered herself beside him, the chill seeping into her coat, her hand brushing the ground until it touched his damp paw. He didn't flinch this time. Instead, he leaned into her palm, still staring out into the tracks as though guarding the memory of whoever he awaited. Clara's thoughts swirled. A puppy this young couldn't have chosen such devotion on his own. He had been taught it, imprinted with it, bound to it. Somewhere in this city was the truth of that bond. And somewhere in this city was the heartbreak of why it had been severed. As she sat there in the storm, Clara felt the shape of a story forming, one too heavy to ignore. It was no longer just a stray at a station. It was a vow unbroken, a wound unhealed, and a truth powerful enough to make strangers stop in their tracks. And she knew, before the night ended, she would have to choose. To turn away like the others, or to step forward and uncover the secret that held a puppy prisoner to the rails of a city that had forgotten him. The morning after the storm, the sky was washed clean, a pale canvas streaked with faint gold. Clara returned to the station with heavy eyes but a determined heart. The puppy was there, as she knew he would be, sitting straighter now despite the exhaustion clinging to his frame. The trains came and went, passengers flooding in and out, but he never shifted his gaze. His vigil had outlasted another night. Clara had made her choice. She couldn't stand on the sidelines any longer. She asked questions at the kiosks, pressing conductors, cleaners, anyone who might know. Most shook their heads, but one elderly porter paused, his brow furrowing. "That pup's not stray," he said quietly. "He used to come here with a boy. Every day after school. Sat right there, waiting for his father's train. Then one day, the boy stopped coming. Only the dog returned." His voice softened. "Been weeks now." The words struck Clara like a blow. She looked back at the puppy, his fragile body anchored to a memory too strong to break. A boy, a father, and a loyalty too deep for the young creature to abandon. She felt her chest tighten with a grief that wasn't hers, yet weighed on her all the same. Later that evening, as the station lights flickered on, Clara spotted him again, the man in the navy coat. His stride was the same, his shoulders heavy, his eyes downcast. The puppy leapt to his feet, tail whipping with desperate hope, a cry breaking from his chest that turned more heads than before. This time, Clara stepped into the man's path. "Wait," she said firmly. He stiffened, eyes flicking to hers, then to the dog at her side. The moment cracked something open between them. The puppy barked again, clawing at the ground, frantic to reach him. Clara searched the man's face, and in that instant she saw it all. The guilt, the sorrow, the unbearable weight of what he carried. "He knows you," Clara said. Her voice was steady, but her heart was pounding. "Why do you keep walking away?" The man's jaw tightened. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, with a voice roughened by grief, he whispered, "Because he's waiting for someone who will never come." His eyes flicked down to the pup, and his next words broke like glass. "My son, he died. The dog doesn't understand." The station noise dimmed around them, muffled by the force of those words. Clara's throat ached as she looked at the trembling animal, his devotion now threaded with unbearable tragedy. The dog still believed, still held vigil for the boy whose footsteps would never echo across the platform again. And the father, drowned in his own loss, could not face the living reminder of what was gone. Clara bent to gather the puppy in her arms. His body shook, but he pressed against her chest, eyes locked on the man as if begging him to stay. "You can't keep leaving him like this," she said softly. He's grieving too. He's waiting for someone to help him understand. The man's eyes brimmed, but he turned away, fighting the storm inside him. For a heartbeat, Clara thought he would vanish again, swallowed by the city's endless anonymity. But then he faltered, shoulders collapsing beneath the truth he could no longer outrun. Slowly, with trembling hands, he reached forward. The puppy yelped, wriggling free of Clara's arms, scrambling toward him. The reunion was not joyous. It was raw, aching, pierced with sounds too human to belong to either. The man knelt, gathering the shivering pup against his chest, burying his face in wet fur as though it was both punishment and mercy. The dog whimpered, then quieted, his body finally resting against the one anchor left to him. Clara stepped back, watching the two of them, grief and devotion entwined in a silence that felt almost sacred. The man looked up at her, eyes hollow yet burning with something fragile. Resolve, perhaps, or the faint beginning of acceptance. "Thank you," he murmured, voice unsteady. "I didn't know how to face him." Clara shook her head gently. "He's been facing it for both of you. Now you don't have to do it alone." The station lights flickered again, casting long shadows across the platform. Another train roared past, shaking the ground, but this time the puppy did not lunge forward. He stayed curled against the man. His vigil finally answered, his loyalty finding its place in living arms rather than fading echoes. As Clara walked away, the storm inside her eased. She knew the world would never notice the tiny story that had unfolded here, among strangers and trains and the rush of ordinary lives. But for one man and one small creature, the weight of loss had shifted into something else, something that hurt, but also healed. And as the puppy finally closed his eyes, leaning into the warmth of his keeper, the truth became clear. Sometimes the ones who wait the longest are the ones who remind us how to keep moving forward.